Hello, this is Jeff Van Zanten, CFO of Aptus, and you're listening to CFO Thought-Leader Podcast.
This is episode 146. I'm Jack Sweeney, and you're listening to CFO Thought-Leader, a podcast in pursuit of an answer to a single question. How, as a finance leader, are you driving change in your organization? How are you driving? In this episode, we hear from David Giannetto, an author and consultant who's written a new book, Big Social Mobile: How Digital Initiatives Can Reshape the Enterprise and Drive Business Results.
You know, we think of Starbucks with their mobile app as the most successful wallet application in the world. Nobody else can come even close to what their app has done from a mobile wallet perspective. Because when you step up to a cash register at Starbucks, there's 87,000 drink combinations that you can order. And that financial checkout process for I think it's 10.5 billion or more cups of coffee they sell a day. The financial transaction takes up so much time, it delays the workflow in the store. But the mobile app was designed to make that checkout instantaneous, right? So what they really did was create a mobile app that supported that value proposition in the store of a great experience.
Listen to our complete interview with David after these words from our sponsor. Does your finance department remain bogged down in the trenches using spreadsheets to accomplish complex accounting and finance tasks? This is no way to operate a modern finance organization. Blackline has the solution. A finance and accounting end-to-end platform. It's finance, controls, and automation. It's time to reinvest your people's time in high-value activities and enter the age of modern finance. Check out a no-hassle free demo at blackline.com/CFO. Hello, we're speaking to David Giannetto, an author and consultant who's authored a new book, Big Social Mobile: How Digital Initiatives Can Reshape the Enterprise and Drive Business Results. David, welcome.
Hi, Jack. Thanks for having me.
So as you know, we spend a good deal of time these days speaking to finance leaders about how they're empowering the front lines of their enterprises, and this is in terms of decision support. There's a little question, frontline workers have never been so empowered in terms of their decision-making, or so we've been told. And we've been led to believe this has everything to do with the greater data availability along the front lines. But help us better understand what exactly is happening to the enterprise.
Well, I think that vision is alive and well. There is a huge desire to fully empower frontline decision makers. You know, anyone that's really a channel chain account manager interacting directly with consumers. That's really the field I've been in for about 15 years now, in the business intelligence space. How do you deploy information out to those folks and getting them to make better fact-based decisions? But I think in a lot of organizations, it's really still a dream. And when we add big data to the mix, it has really kind of muddied the waters once again. So I think there's a strong desire to do that, but in practical application, a lot of organizations are still struggling to get beyond just the basic information to really coordinate actions and decision makings with their strategic intent.
Well, for the finance leaders out there who are really trying to get a sense of where their organization, currently resides, are they with the laggards or are they with the world-class organizations? What are some of the best practices and ways to empower the organization today that world-class organizations are advancing with?
You could probably break it down into three things to use as an initial high-level check. How much information is accessible to people who are out in the field the moment at which they need it, at that critical conversation with either a customer, a prospect, somebody who's a consumer, or that critical account manager, chain manager, if you're a B2B. So how is information accessible to them? When they get information, is it relevant to who they are and only who they are, so that they're not distracted by a lot of other information? And is it actionable? And actionable allows them to make a decision or take action that helps the organization achieve its larger goals. So you can throw a lot of information at them and you can expect them to consume it, wade through it, analyze it, and make some good decision or take some good action as a result. But really what you want to do is streamline down to that action and say, look, here's the opportunity. This is the valuable offer. This is the information that you need to convince this consumer to become a customer. And you can look at those three things through two lenses. One is traditional enterprise data, and the pinnacle of information there is still profit or margin. What is it that you need to do to turn this consumer into a customer at the highest value possible? And then the other lens is, of course, big data. How much information are you giving that frontline person about who this person is that they're talking to and where that person stands relative to other people that the organization has successfully turned into customers or achieved some other outcome that is beneficial to the organization.
So tell us a little bit about the book and what you set out to do. And again, the words big, social, mobile. You know, we get this sense of organizations that are really learning how to leverage, you know, the social world and empower their people with mobile devices.
Well, the book takes its name from big data, social media, and mobile technology. And those are three initiatives that every organization is spending a lot of time, money, resources on these days. But they're really being handled in very segregated manners. There's a big data initiative, a social initiative, a mobile initiative. Those three things are not linked together, and they're certainly not being tied back to the organization's larger objectives, its processes, and the data, what we think of as big data, is not tied directly into traditional enterprise data. And what the book does is say that you can and you should be doing that. These initiatives are part of one larger movement that's changing the behavior of consumers. And if you want to be effective with these, what I call social consumers, then what you need to do is integrate those three into each other and into the business. And that means you're using them in a very different way. You're taking the data, you're turning it into information, you're connecting it back to enterprise objectives and business processes and the role of traditional decision makers, those frontline people we talk to, and really empowering them. So instead of the current view, which is forcing marketing into the front and almost pushing them into a direct sales role, I'm saying that you need to rely on the organization as it's traditionally been established, on the value proposition that made it successful. And don't try to become highly social, highly mobile, big data friendly, but use those initiatives in a way that bolster what makes you valuable to consumers. And when you do that, you're taking back power in this corporate consumer relationship that's being tested right now, because social media has given a lot of power to consumers, and they're using it. The savvy ones are using it. But inevitably, companies have to take that power back if they're going to continue to guide consumers down this path to the most profitable behavior, which is what they're trying to achieve in order to drive their bottom line results.
Now, for the finance leader who is looking at these different initiatives, and yes, they're often pursued independent from one another, how do they begin to prioritize? Do they need a social initiative? Do they need a mobile initiative? Do they need a big data first initiative in the back to make sure they're looking at the data the way it needs to be looked at?
Well, they're going to need all three inevitably. But I think the good news for most organizations is they probably already have all three, at least any sizable organization. Some smaller organizations might not have mobile initiatives yet, but that's inevitable as well. So when I'm working with organizations, I'm trying to get them to think that things really haven't changed. Financial leaders have always had to balance priorities. The good ones take a very clear look at what is this initiative going to do for the business, right? Because they hold information relative to that profit equation, and if the organization isn't profitable over the long term, it's not going to be around that long. Social, mobile, big data, these things consume a lot of resources. There's a lot of new technology coming in that's being brought to bear. It's all very expensive. So you have to really look those specialized practitioners in the eye and say to somebody who is a social practitioner, for example, what is this going to get the business? Because a friend, a follower, or a fan is not the same thing as a customer. And they're going to find that a very intimidating, very challenging question because, big data, social media, and mobile practitioners really have never been challenged to answer the question of what's the ROI on their efforts. And that's really what I think needs to happen today. And that's got to come from somebody. And since the CFO is the owner of that equation, the custodian of it for the organization, he or she can be asking that hard question and connecting those specialized practitioners to their counterparts. Social should be supporting sales in the traditional role of marketing. It is another channel to identify prospects, to close business, and then to interact more efficiently with existing customers and try to upsell them and cross-sell them. So let's not think that we need to radically change what we do. Certainly these initiatives can help us evolve into a more effective and efficient organization, but that perspective and the mindset that I see being most successful.
Quite a few CFOs, I think, when they hear the word social and they hear the word mobile, they're thinking, how do we regulate these in the workplace? How do we, have our employees carry their mobile devices in and mix their data with ours?
Right. That fear has really held a lot of organizations back. The fear is dying slightly because so many people use mobile technology and are engaged on social platforms in their personal life that everyone's becoming more comfortable with it overall. And at the same time, consumers are pressuring companies to engage in this way. But where that fear kicks in is it prevents the organization from allowing these initiatives to really be absorbed into kind of the DNA of the organization itself, what I say integrated into each other and into the enterprise itself. So they leave these initiatives in the hands of, let's say, a social media practitioner, and they allow that practitioner to interact with the community, and they expect them to be trained and not make mistakes and not embarrass the brand. And generally they do a very good job of that today. But the cost of doing that, the cost of that approach, is that specialized practitioner doesn't usually understand the underlying value proposition of the organization. They don't know how to really reflect that value proposition across this new channel or many channels that are social media platforms, potentially across the mobile device as well. They don't know how to interact with the community in a way that generates big data that gives good feedback to the organization and allows them to learn what customers are doing, what they prefer, what their place is in the market. So when you leave these initiatives segregated with specialized practitioners because you're scared what your mainstream employees will do who are maybe not as socially educated, you're getting very little return for all that effort, because specialized practitioners like social media analysts, they are experts at creating bite-sized content, at generating more fans, more followers, perhaps better engagement, perhaps better sentiment. Those things do not automatically translate to more customers or higher market baskets or dominance over your competitors. That requires a separate perspective, a separate group of actions, and that largely relies on employees who understand, quote, the business that you're all about. So you've got to get over that fear as an organization. Use those specialized practitioners as conduits who connect consumers to the experts in the organizations, and then certainly you do that carefully and in a controlled manner. But today, people are pretty socially aware that if they say something bad, it's going to have long legs out there on the internet.
When it comes to driving business results across the enterprise then and leveraging social mobile, what can you share with us in terms of companies that have really succeeded?
Yeah, I have to really use a lot of examples in the book because it's a little bit challenging for folks to draw this difference between using social media really well or a mobile app really well or using big data to understand their business really well and becoming what I call in the book, quote, big social mobile. So I use a lot of examples, like a very large one, for example, that takes people somewhere they don't normally go is Starbucks. You know, we think of Starbucks with their mobile app as the most successful wallet application in the world. Nobody else can come even close to what their app has done from a mobile wallet perspective. But that's not where that app started. That app started to make the workflow in the stores more efficient. Because when you step up to a cash register at Starbucks, there's 87,000 drink combinations that you can order. And that financial checkout process for that I think it's 10.5 billion or more cups of coffee they sell a day. And I'd have to go back to the book to get that exact number. But the financial transaction takes up so much time, it delays the workflow in the store. But the mobile app was designed to make that checkout instantaneous, right? So what they really did was create a mobile app that supported that value proposition in the store of a great experience. It turned into the most successful wallet app in the world, and it's great that it did that. but they start it with a business perspective. It's the same thing as my local dentist who I worked with. She added on a very simple mobile app that reminded her patients when their 6 months checkup was due. And what she found is that 40% of the population doesn't come for that second insurance authorized cleaning. But by using an app, she could get that up to over 80%, right? So that directly drives her success. And that very simple use of mobile technology has a better ROI than I bet the most expensive apps that are developed for most organizations. So we could go through one example after another of how what you see on the surface as just good engagement via social, a clever mobile app, or collecting broad data isn't really the right mindset. You have to start with your business and say, how can this new technique or technology really bolster us, really help us evolve to that next perspective? Dunkin' Donuts did it with social, National Oil and Gas. They did it by combining social and mobile with big data. Big box retailers like Walmart did it using big data to target very specific customers and increase their propensity to buy, to get them to buy things that they would not have otherwise. So I use a lot of examples to try to make it very real and tangible for the reader.
Seems like there's always, some of the most innovative stories we hear are coming from the B2C side. Is there anything happening on B2B?
Well, the real change in B2B is getting all of the organizations that are in the very broad supply chain to work together with this increased focus on how are we going to drive profitability overall. And it's really more of what we think of as collaboration, the creation of tight communities of, raw material providers, manufacturers, distributors, all the way out to retailers, working together to say, okay, how do we maximize profit? That means running more efficiently and effectively, using less materials, just-in-time inventory, and then being more clear, having a more clear understanding of how marketing campaigns are affecting the mix that needs to occur at retailers. How do you get that mix there at the right time? Bolster that with some local merchandising. So they're collaborating much more efficiently and effectively across what I think of as the supply chain on the B2B. It's much more cooperative now than it ever used to be.
When it comes to architecting these types of strategies, where do you see finance sitting down at the table? What can you share with us as far as the role finance is playing in driving these types of initiatives?
Well, I can give you a parallel that maybe will resonate with CFO and financial leaders. Balance sheets and income statements are not what drive the business, right? They are the result of what has happened in the business in the past. So to think that those things will really influence behavior on a daily basis is nonsensical. So we need to set that aside. And we think of something more tangible, like the budget planning and forecasting process. Just take a step back, look impersonally at your budget planning and forecasting process, and ask yourself the question of, does this go beyond the process itself? Does this really tie down into the drivers of my business so that it lives and breathes with the organization? Because every year there are hundreds of thousands of organizations that go out of business. Most of them created budgets. How many of them created a budget that planned for bankruptcy producing growth? Very few. None of them did that, right? So budget planning and forecasting most of the time is a fallacy. So you have to be comfortable as a CFO or financial leader taking off that finance hat a little bit and stepping down into the business and saying, look, we're going to get financial results based on the activities and the actions and decisions you make. What are the drivers that we need to focus on so that we get the financial results that we want, right? It's cause and effect. It's action result. And too often financial professionals live in the world of the results without getting back to what's actionable. And that creates a rift between the business and the Office of Finance, because the business feels like they come to work every day, they do their job, and then they have to deal with the reports and the information they get from finance, which is detached from how do I make this happen. So partnering with the business is really about talking about what is going to drive the results, the financial results that you want. And that works whether we're talking about a social media initiative, a mobile initiative, a big data initiative, launching some new technology, whether it's CRM or ERP or route accounting, some new project that makes your supply chain more efficient. That approach always works. What will drive us to the results we want?
For those organizations that are just not succeeding when it comes to driving true business results from their digital initiatives, they just are not seeing the payoff. Can you identify for us perhaps what often the roadblocks might be?
The biggest roadblock is that they just don't understand how to connect these things back to the business. So when I sat down to write the book, I feel like I had to do more than just tell the good and the bad of this story. What I did is I laid out, 5 steps that they could actually read the book, answer the questions, go step by step through their own organization and understand, for example, the first step is, how do you really break down your community into things that have traditional meaning to you? How do you identify in the digital world who is a prospect versus who is a customer versus who is never going to be a customer? Who could be a good partner to you? Who would be socially influential to help you generate more business within your social community? That's really the first step, and it sends them down the road of thinking of these digital initiatives and consumers who are inhabiting a digital landscape and interacting with their business digitally in traditional terms. And that alone helps them really understand that, wow, you know what, this big data stuff, it's not so foreign, it's not so esoteric. It really tells us more about our potential customers than we ever knew before. But it tells us so much more. It tells us more about their demographics, their likes, dislikes, their social patterns, their behaviors, their value systems, their beliefs. And we can quantify all those things for the first time. And then it becomes a very traditional question. What is the pattern there that turns them into customers? The same thing that marketing and sales has been doing for years. It's just using different tools and techniques. So the biggest hurdle is getting them to understand that they can think about these things in traditional terms. The challenge is that they have a lot of media hype. They have a lot of very specialized practitioners telling that no, bigger fans, bigger followers, more engagement, more sentiment is the answer. Just go back to what is it that drives your business, and that's the revenue minus expense equals profit equation. And if they can't tie it to that, then there's a problem, and you have to drill into that and make them do it, and that will send you down a better road.
For those finance leaders who are really doing this right, really playing the role within their organization that does drive business results from these digital initiatives, what is their mindset? What do finance leaders who are getting it right share in common?
Well, I have to say that there are not a lot of financial leaders driving the success of these initiatives. Really, you're finding much more creative thinking, CMOs, CIOs, CTOs, or even division heads on the business side of the house than you are CFOs really stepping in. But I think the mindset that is shared at an executive level is this concrete belief that, look, this is what made our business successful. We have engaged with new digital initiatives all the way back to the internet. And when the internet first came in, it was very disruptive. It caused a lot of expense. Most organizations didn't use it very effectively. But over time, it became just a mainstream part of the business, bolstering the business. So I think that we get confused by these type of digital initiatives because it's only been 10 years since social really hit to any large extent. So you've had social, then you've had mobile, and now you have big data, all within 10 years causing disruption within the organization. The best leaders from any of the disciplines are the people that stay the most grounded, see through that confusion and say, where's the value that this is adding? I know we need more followers. I know we need more engagement, better sentiment. We've always needed those things. But how are those things translating back to our traditional business model?
David Giannetto, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thanks for having me.
To subscribe to the podcast, go to iTunes and subscribe to CFO Thought Leader, or check out CFOThoughtLeader.com. If you're interested in any of the resources or books mentioned during this podcast, you'll find them on our show notes pages waiting for you at CFOThoughtLeader.com. Special thanks to Blackline for sponsoring this episode. If you're interested in discovering how Blackline can bring your finance department into the age of modern finance, go ahead and visit blackline.com/CFO. This is Jack Sweeney. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.